Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First, I would like to welcome Dr. Farhan, the speaker in this session. He is a postdoctoral fellow in the IRC Communication System and Sensing. Uh, Also, I would like to say a few things before we start the session. Number one, this session is 2 hours, include 20 minutes for question and answers. The question and answers at the end of the session will be only on the scope of this session, will be only about the paper writings and also the format that Dr. Farhan will explain to you. I know a lot of you have many questions, especially regarding your research program that you are enrolled in, and also you might ask about the thesis, about many other things related to the program. For those type of questions, inshallah, next week there will be a dedicated session for this type of questions. There will be speakers from the Undergraduate Research Office who will be answering your question regarding those things. But the questions for today, which will be at the end of this session, will be please make them only on the scope of the session, especially about the writings and also how the structure of the paper and all the things that Dr. Farhan will explain to you, inshallah. So, with no further ado, I will give the speaker to Dr. Farhan, and he may start the session.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much, Dr. Abdullah. Am I audible? Can you please confirm? Okay. I'm sharing the screen. Can you please confirm if you can see the... Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Undergraduate Research Office that I've been given this opportunity to speak about research paper writing skills and to talk about how to write a research paper. I hope after the session, everyone will feel more comfortable and will be in a better shape to write a good research paper. So as Dr. Abdullah pointed out, my name is Farhan Bhat. I am from IRC, Communication Systems and Sensing. These are my details. In case of any question, any query, you can you just feel free to contact me. Okay, so as you can see from the title is IMRAD structure. So I'll talk about the IMRAD first and then I'll continue from here. Okay, IMRAD is a common structured format for scientific research papers and lab reports, where the I comes from the introduction. The M of this IMRAD comes from methods. The R specifies the results and D from the discussion. So that is how it becomes IMRAD, I-M-R-A-D. So it follows a structure beginning with a broad context that is basically covered by the introduction. Then it talks about the narrowing to a specific methods or results. So it basically covers this M and R, methods and results. And finally, there is a discussion on the broader implication that is covered by the discussion session. So that is how it comes like IMRAD, introduction, methods, results, and discussion. So this is, you can say, the heart of your research paper. So one very important thing is that it is a general organizational framework. It is, I mean, a paper can have different sections, titles, underlying content. It still maps to introduction, methods, results, and discussion. So before I proceed, I will just quickly show you a few of the research papers as a template, right? So let me just open few research papers just as a template. So you can just get a broad overview of how different research papers look like. Okay. Right. Okay. So you can see this is a research paper. So this is a letter paper having only 4 pages. So you can see that there is an abstract, there's an introduction, and then there's a title of the section, which is something related to the research paper, right? And you can see a title related to simulations. I mean, a topic that is altogether not relevant maybe to you. but relevant to the research paper itself. And finally, you can see a conclusion, right? Okay, let's have a look at another research paper. So you can see now the number of pages are 26 because this is not a research paper, rather this is a different kind of a paper. You can call it as a kind of a survey paper. You can see there is an abstract, there is an introduction, and then kind of brief history. I'm just skimming just for your information. Then you can see then that there is a different kind of a title like communication, networking. I mean, in the broader context, you can say that it basically is related to the topic itself. Uh, you can see that there are different kinds of titles. So it's a very big research paper having different kind of figures. And eventually, you can see the conclusion. Okay, let's have another example. So this is another research paper. So the first paper you saw that was of 4 pages. The second paper you saw was of around 26 pages. Now it's another paper. This is around 7 pages. So you can see that there is an abstract, there is an introduction, and then we can see that there are some subsections. There is a section of results and discussion, some subsections, and finally it is ending up with a conclusion. So you can see the conclusion in almost every research paper, right? So now you can see a research paper. This is basically a magazine paper. So a very important note right now that I would like to give that this training session is regarding the research paper writing and not the different type of research paper. And so I'm just giving a quick overview of the research paper because I want to speak about that. So you can see in this magazine paper, there is no abstract at all, right? So there is no introduction at all. It's a different kind of titles are there. You can see the names of the sections are different, right? And but again, you can see that it is ending up on the conclusion section. So that was just a brief overview. Now I will tell you why I was speaking about this. Let's move on to the slides. Just a second. Okay. Okay. So why I was talking about the AIMRAD, that it has a research paper has an introduction, methods, results, and discussion, right? Because from the paper that you have just seen, I mean, you could see different kind of sections. You could see introduction in many of those papers and conclusion was there, but introduction, methods, results, and discussion, I mean, not the exact titles you have seen in the research papers. So IMRAD is basically a general organizational framework. So even if a paper uses different section titles, so the underlying content still maps to introduction, methods, results, and discussion. So you might have a different title for the section, but the underlying content, it maps to these 4 things: the introduction, the methods, the results, and the discussion. So I might be explaining my results that, for example, I'm talking about my area basically is regarding the sensing. So maybe the title is the detection, for example, uh, efficiency of the detection, right? So this section would be talking about maybe regarding the results. So I could have different kind of titles, but again, everything is getting mapped to these 4 things, which is the introduction, method, results, and discussion. So this session basically aims to teach participants on how to structure and write research papers for academic journals. So you have to keep this thing in your mind that this is the scope of this training session. So I'll again repeat that you may assume that the research papers have different section titles. So different journals and research field, they use different section names. But if you look carefully, that every paper will still follow the same logical flow. So there would be some kind of introduction, some method would be getting explained, the results would be presented, and finally those results are like interpreted. So overall, the section titles may differ, but it still remains like IMRAD, which is introduction, methodology, results, and the discussion. Okay. The next point is when to publish. So you have done something that is, according to you, is good enough to get published. So when is the right time to get your stuff published? So the first thing is you have to check the originality of the idea at the very beginning of your research. This is the first step. And you have to ask yourself whether this is really good enough, or does it have something new or interesting? So is there anything challenging in your work? Is the work directly related to your current job? Is it a hot topic, something related to state of the art? And have you provided solutions to any difficult problems? So only when all the answers are yes, so you can start preparing your manuscript. This is very important, right? So now is the right time that you have to get yourself ready and start publishing your work. I've given one web link. You can go through this web link. It's very interesting. It basically gives you a kind of an overview that how does a scientific paper get published. So it has all those steps. Since that was not in scope of the topic or the training session, so that is why I've given the link, but it's strongly recommended that you go through this website. It will just take you like around 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and you will get some, the right information that how a paper gets published eventually. Okay, why to publish? If a research stays in the lab, notebook, or hard drive, it has zero impact. So you have done something, extraordinary, right? So if you don't disseminate your results, right, you will not get any kind of recognition. And you cannot say my results are validated because they are confined to you only. So publishing communicates new knowledge. It validates research quality through the peer review because the experts in the field are reviewing your work and they are giving some kind of certification to your work that this is good enough to get published. Research that is not published does not contribute to science, regardless of the effort invested. You have given a lot of effort and you think that my work is very, good enough for the society. So if you are not publishing that, so it will not have that reach to every, prospective user. And eventually it's a kind of an effort that is wasted because people are not getting benefit out of that. So publishing turns the research into impact, visibility, credibility, because if you think that my work is credible, if you don't get any kind of certification from the peers or experts in the field, that is not credible. And progress for the scientific community, obviously. So that is why it is very important that if you have a yes to all those questions that I just mentioned, it's the right time you have to publish. And this is very important that you get your work published. Okay, now coming to the core of this training session, which is the IMRAD, the paper structure, elements of a manuscript. So broadly speaking, these are, the main content of a research paper. It starts from the title, then the abstract, then we have keywords, then introduction, methodology, results, discussion, findings, conclusion, and references. And I'll give a note again that this is a generic framework of a research paper. So you might have different section titles, but again, all of those titles will eventually get mapped to IMRAD, which is I, M, R, and D. So discussion, obviously, that conclusion is also kind of a discussion that eventually you conclude your work. So this is the IMRAD structure. You have titles, names of the authors, abstract, keywords, introduction, materials and methods, results and discussion, which is the IMRAD. So we have spoken enough regarding why we are calling this overall structure as IMRAD. Okay, now coming to the title, which is the first thing. It is very well said that the first impression is the last impression. So you have to keep this thing in your mind. The title should be good and the title should be relevant. This is very important. A title is a name of a research paper, article, or report that briefly and clearly indicates the main topic, focus, or purpose of the work. So it should grab the reader's attention. This is very important, right? So for example, if I'm looking for a certain article, right, in order to improve my literature review, so obviously I will have to go to the internet and I'll start looking for that. Right. So the first thing that I will look at would be the title of the research paper. So that is how the attention of the reader would get grabbed. Right. So the first question would be for the reader is this article relevant to me or not? Obviously, I mean, the detailed answer is in the content, but the first thing is that I will have to look at the title. So the title should be, attractive and should be relevant. The title is extremely important and must be chosen with a great care, as indexing and abstracting of the paper depends on the accuracy of the title. This is very important as well. For example, you have given a title to a research paper that is very attractive, but is it accurate enough or not? For example, you have given a title, but inside the manuscript, inside your research paper, the details are not relevant to the title. So it's a complete, it's a bogus work because you're not honest enough to give the right title. You're just grabbing the attention of the reader. So yes, I need to grab the attention of the reader, but the content should also be matched with whatever I've written. Okay, it should contain the keywords that reflect the contents of the paper. So any improper title paper will get lost and it will never be read. So make a list of the most important keywords. Think of the title that contains those words, and the title could state the conclusion of the paper as well. But it should not be too long. You have to keep this thing in your mind. Okay. Do make the title specific and informative. So avoid vague titles. So it should be very specific and informative. It should not be, a complete sentence. It should be, concised, but it should be specific and, it should be giving the right information. It should include precise technical terms, obviously, because you're giving some title to research paper. It should include the precise technical terms that are relevant to the content of the research paper. And you should use the keywords that reflect the main content and outcome of the paper, because in the paper you're talking about so many things. So you could explicitly specify that these are the 5 keywords of my research paper, and then map those research papers and make a title out of that. Don't use abbreviations or jargon in the title. This is very important. Don't use too long or unfocused title. Overuses filler words like better, different things, some thoughts. These are kind of words that should be avoided in the title. So let's go through an example. Okay, these examples are just generic. It's not even related to my field of study. So that is why we're going to see those titles and see if we can make something out of them or not. Capacitive dust sensing. Okay, it means there is some kind of a dust sensing, but capacitive dust sensing using some kind of a technique, which you can see over here on 3D printed mesh, a prototype circuit study. So it's a good title. It's not too long, and it is giving the right information that it is there would be some kind of a prototype in that regarding the circuitry of the capacitive dust sensing. And it is using some kind of a technique, which is this. So I have all relevant information, and that is where I would decide whether this title is good enough for me to read or not. And as a writer, I think this is good enough that it's a good title. What could be a poor title out of related to this? Some experiments, again, you have used like filler words like some experiments on dust and material. It is giving me no information. So the information that I've extracted from this is that there are some experiments in that. What kind of experiments? I don't know. I'm already at par with a certain level of research. So I should explicitly know what kind of experiment the title is talking about. So some experiments is not a good title. It should explicitly state what kind of experiment is being conducted or was conducted on research paper. On destined materials, not good enough. So this is very generic. It's not a good title at all. Let's go through the next title, which is real-time detection of microplastics in water via electrokinetic readout circuits. Okay. It is telling me that there would be some kind of detection. What kind of detection? Real time. It's not something that is recorded or, there's no offline processing. There is a real time detection. Okay. Of what? Microplastics in water. And the technique is also mentioned, that electrokinetic readout circuits would be there. So I have all the relevant information. Not a single word in this title is like irrelevant. What would be the poor title out of that? Study of particles in water and investigation. So this is not good enough. As I've said that the readers of research papers are already at a certain caliber level. So you can, they're at par with a certain threshold. So they should explicitly know that what kind of detection is being mentioned. It's a real-time detection. Okay, microplastics in water. So this is study of particles in water. This is very generic, right? This could not be a research paper. It could be like a tutorial or a lecture, but not a research paper at all. As a rule of thumb, the perfect length of a title is 10 words. But again, this is not mandatory. This is just a rule of thumb that you can follow. Okay, the next thing in the research paper after the title is an abstract, right? So a good abstract is an invitation to read your paper. Very important, right? For example, I as a reader, what I do, if I'm looking for a research paper, I would like to just first go through I will go to the right repository. I will write down some keywords. And the first thing that I will look at will be the title. And then the thing that I have to do, I have to decide whether I have to read this research paper or not. So the first thing that I would do is I would go through the abstract of that. So an abstract can be defined as like kind of a summary of the information in document. It is of fundamental importance, So it should be clearly written, and it is the only part of the manuscript that must be read by any reader if he wants to decide whether he wants to read out the rest of the research paper or not. So this is the first thing. It should provide a brief summary of each of the main sections of the IMRAD of the paper. So it should address the problem, state the principal objective, describe the methods used, summarize the results, and state the principal conclusions, all within one paragraph, right? So it is a summary of the introduction. It is a summary of the methods, results, conclusion, and it uses key phrases and keywords like or aim, we analyzed, we found, we discussed, in conclusion, right? So all of those things are like encapsulated within abstract. Okay, so what should be the length of that abstract? It depends upon the publisher. For example, there are many publishers who explicitly specify that the abstract should not be more lengthier than 250 words. It should be written in one paragraph. It should be written in the past tense as it refers to work done. Long words should be followed by its abbreviation, which would be used throughout the abstract and the paper. It should not cite any references. So this is except in rare cases, but generally speaking, there are no references at all in abstract. It should never give any information or conclusion that is not stated in the paper. It is easier to write the abstract after the completion of the paper. So although abstract is the first part of the paper of the title, but it is strongly recommended that the abstract should be written at the end. Obviously, it is placed at the top of the research paper, but it should be written at the end because, as you have just seen, it is written in the past tense, and it is summarizing the introduction. The section that is after the abstract, it is summarizing the method. The section that is after the introduction, it is summarizing the results and the conclusion. Conclusion the last section of the research paper. So it is summarizing everything. So that is why it should be written by the writer at the end, but it is placed is placed at the top of the research paper because for the reader that is the first part, and this is the point where he decides whether he wants to read the rest of the research paper or not. Okay, the do. Summarize the purpose, methods, results, and conclusion concisely. Highlight the novelty or the contribution clearly. Do make it self-contained. The reader sees the key points clearly. Do use clear and concise sentences. This is very important for the abstract. Very important, do nots. Don't include results not mentioned in the paper because it's kind of unethical that you have mentioned something in the abstract, but later on when the reader decides to read your research paper, he will not find that the thing that you mentioned in your abstract. So this is very important. Don't include anything that is not there in the rest of the paper. Do not include unclear background or too much literature review. Don't use citations or long references in the abstract. Do not claim things you did not do, which is the same. I mean, obviously, you're supposed to generate some results, but don't claim anything that you have not mentioned in the rest of the research paper, and don't exceed the word limit as well. This is also very important because it would get an immediate rejection by the editorial board if the abstract is exceeding the word limit. So no matter how much good work that you have done in your research paper, if you at the very start you exceeded the word limit for the abstract, it means you're violating the set pattern or the set standard of the journal or the conference, and it would get immediate rejection at the very start. Let's go through an example of the abstract. Again, this is generic, so don't think that this is not related to you, right? So let's see and start reading that and try to see the overall structure of the abstract. The porosity and large surface area of carbon nanotubes made them a candidate active material for gas sensing applications. So I'm considering right now as a generic reader. I'm even not related to this field. So let's see how I'm going to evaluate and how I'm going to perceive what has been written. So in the first sentence, it is speaking about some large surface area of a carbon nanotubes, and it is specifying that it is a candidate for gas sensing application. So it's kind of an introduction for me. Okay. So in the abstract, the first statement is giving me some kind of an introduction. However, the responsivity and sensitivity of CNTs toward hydrogen are lower than those of metal oxide semiconductor materials, such as titanium dioxide. The addition of this chemical or metal is found to increase the sensitivity of the resulting composite material at the expense of increasing the resistance. It means you're now explicitly specifying some kind of a problem. So in the first sentence, you gave some kind of an introduction. And related to that introduction, now you are highlighting that there is some problem associated, and this is the problem statement. This paper presents a new dielectrophoresis process to fabricate nanoparticle-based hydrogen sensors at room temperature. So now you're telling about your paper, what you did. So this is the objective of your work. The simple and low-cost process is based on tuning the AC signal frequency to deposit different nanoparticles in stages, forming a composite sensing layer across interdigitated electrodes. The sensing layers have been characterized using field emission scanning, electron microscope, something, related to the work, right? How you did it. So you started with the introduction, then you specified a problem, and then you specified your objective, and the methodology has been explained in these 3 lines. Okay. Sensors fabricated with only CNTs showed low resistance and weak sensitivity of less than 2%. And then you're giving some kind of numerical values, right? Okay. When CNTs are deposited together within a single stage, however, the sensor shows high resistance. Now, what you did, you're specifying the results, and you can see the sensor shows high resistance because there was some kind of interruption in some path. So you're clearly telling that these are the results that I've received, and probably this is the issue that you might have faced. You can also specify that in a one sentence as well. This work provides a proof of concept that the two-stage DEP enhances the performance of the sensor in terms of sensitivity and resistance compared to some other technique, which is highly desirable in fabricating composite and multi-layer sensing materials. Why your study is important? So in one paragraph, you started with the introduction, you specified the problem, you specified what you did and how you did, and what were the results. And in the last, you're giving this information to the reader that the work that you have done is important, right? This is very important. So all of the content is covered within one paragraph, right? Okay. After the abstract, the next section of a research paper is the keywords, right? Keywords are specific words that describe the main topics, methods, or focus area of the paper. Purpose of the keywords is discoverability, improve chances of being found in academic searches like Google Scholar, IEEE Explorer, PubMed, etc. Right? It should summarize the content, highlight the main ideas, techniques, or concepts, and it should target the audience to ensure your work reaches researchers interested in the same area. So if I'm looking for a research paper to read, what is the first thing that I would do? For example, I want to read a research paper related to, let's say, there's a lot of talk about 6G these days. So I'm interested in, for example, integrated sensing and communication in coastal areas, right? For example, something like this. So I would write integrated sensing and communication, coastal areas, and then, for example, I want to look for some radar applications. I would write radar, right? So I would mention these keywords. So if those keywords are related to the keywords of any research paper, so those research papers would appear to me at the top of my research. So keywords are also very important. So you have to give the keywords very carefully, very intelligently, and make sure that those keywords are also related to the work that you have done. Do pick specific terms, not overly general. Like, don't be too specific. Do include synonyms or related terms if appropriate. Do check journal instructions for number format, because there's every journal has its own kind of format for the keywords. Do not use extremely general words like study and data is key, because those are not keywords. Keywords mean the keywords related to your research, the keywords that are related to the work that has been presented in a research paper, right? So study or data, I mean, these kinds of words are not the keywords of a research paper at all. Do not pick terms that are not discussed in the paper. Obviously, this is obvious. Okay, so now you are done with the introduction. Sorry, you are done with the title. You are done with the abstract. You are done with the index terms. The next section, a very important, is introduction. Okay, so what we have done till now, we started with the title, because title is the first thing that the reader would look at. And in order to decide whether the reader has to read the entire paper or not, the first thing that he would do, he would read out the abstract. And then he will make his mind whether I want to read the rest of the research paper or not. So now you're coming to the next part, which is the introduction and the first part of IMRAD as well. So in the introduction is kind of storytelling writing. We move from a general to specific. So you'll start from the basic, and then probably you will reach to, you can say, the state of the art. So introduction should not be too broad or vague. It should not be more than 2 pages. It is a general rule of thumb. Sometimes it could be more than 2 pages. Sometimes it could be just within 1 page. For example, if you're just writing a letter, obviously 2 pages are like quite a lot. So in the introduction, there's generally known information about the topic. You can call it as kind of a literature review. The prior studies, the historical context to your research, your hypothesis, and an overview of the results, and how the article is organized. All of these 4 things are there in the introduction. What are the do's? You have to start broad, then go specific. You have to cite key recent studies to provide context. You have to clearly state your research question and objectives, and you have to link paragraphs, because in introduction for example, there are 2 page introduction. So obviously there would be multiple paragraphs. So each paragraph would be linked to the previous paragraph, right? So that is how you will start. You will start from the basics, and eventually, gradually, you will move on to the state of the art. For example, you want to talk about uh, you can say the self-driving cars. So you have done some research related to vehicular technology, right? So you will start from the very basic, the basics of the car, the evolution of the technology, step by step, and eventually you're going to state you will explicitly specify the state of the art in that particular research. You have to link the paragraphs. So the coherence should be maintained. Each paragraph should be linked to the previous paragraph. Don't overload with unnecessary background, because in the introduction you're giving background, but you have to keep this thing in your mind that should not be, too lengthy. Don't include results or methods, because this is just an introduction, because from the title you can see title of the section, which is the introduction. It is the introduction, right? Don't make the introduction too long or too vague. Okay. So let's go through an example of the introduction. The title is The Early Detection of Cancer Cells in the Circulating Blood Using Electrical Fields. So this is the title. So how an introduction should look like for such kind of a title. You will start about the cancer in general. You'll explain the cancer. That's it, right? And then you will move to the method used for the early detection of cancer cells, right? And then you will write about the limitations of the current detection methods. So you have talked about the cancer, the methods that are used for the early detection of that, and the limitations of the current state of the art. And then you will say that my work is this, because you're writing the research paper only after that you have decided that your work is good enough. So obviously you're kind of pushing, the body of the knowledge, right? So obviously you have to explicitly specify the state of the art and specify the limitations of that, and then you will try to say that my work is related to this. A brief outline of the approach sometimes and how the paper is organized. This is also the last, for example, the sentence, last paragraph of the introduction. So I'll re-summarize this. You will introduce your topic. You will describe the background, your research problem, you specify the objectives and the map out of your paper. The map out of the paper means in the last paragraph, you will say, in the next section, I will explain this. The section 3 will explain this. The section 4 will explain this. And eventually you will say that in the section 5, 6, I will conclude my research paper. So this is usually the last paragraph in the introduction. Okay, now you're done with the introduction. The next section is the methodology. Okay, the methodology explains how the research was conducted, so the others could replicate or validate it, right? So you're done with the introduction. That was the generic information and the generic information regarding your work. Now you're going to explain your own work. I mean, you can say the reason of writing the research paper. I mean, you have eventually reached to that point that you have to explain your methodology, right? This is your claim that my work is good enough to get published. Okay, this is my methodology. It explains how the research was conducted so others could replicate or validate it. This is very important. You're writing the research paper. It means you want others to validate this. You want others to replicate this. You're not hiding anything from them, right? So it should be written in a way so that the others could also replicate your work. Key elements of a methodology. The first thing is the research design. For example, the type of study, whether it is experimental, it has simulation, it has some kind of analysis, this is some kind of a case study, right? So this is the first thing, the research design. What type of study is this? Is it experimental? I mean, you have demonstrated something in the lab. You have figured out that, for example, in the lab, for example, you're from the chemical engineering background. You have mixed chemical A with chemical B, and you have got chemical C, right? So it means this is something related to experimental. Okay, now your research design is experimental, or is it simulation based only? For example, um, you have some kind of a simulator, you have some kind of mathematical equation. Based on those, you figured out something, and now you're trying to simulate those. Or whether you study some kind of analysis of something that already exists, and so you're trying to analyze that. It just could be a critical analysis as well, right? Or some kind of a case study about particular thing that is already there, and you're trying to make it as a case study and trying to find out, the pros and cons of that. The second element of a methodology is the materials, the data sources. For example, the equipment, the chemicals, software, data sets that you have used. The next step is the step-by-step description of what was done. You have to state that in the methodology section. So at the start, you have mentioned the type of the study, the type of the material of the data sources, and now you're describing step by step exactly what was done by you by making use of the first two elements. The next is the governing equations, assumptions, or the algorithms that you have used, and eventually the analysis method, the statistical tool, the error analysis, performance metrics, equipment use, etc. So all of those four subsections could be a part of this bigger section, which is the methodology section, right? And again, I'm again just want you to recall what I have stated at the very start. I'll just state that thing again for those of you who just arrived late, that even if a paper uses different section title, the underlying content still maps to introduction, methods, results, and discussion too. So in the methodology section, you could have different kind of sections, like For example, I just gave an example of chemical engineering. So the title could be related to, the efficacy of chemical A, and then in the subsections you're talking about that particular chemical, but eventually it is getting mapped to that methodology, right? So overall the structure remains the same. So you are talking about the methodology, but it could be a different title for your particular research paper. And similarly, the key elements would eventually get mapped to all these five elements, but it could be it is a possibility that you would have different kind of caption for your subsections. Okay. In the methodology, it is highly recommended that you give some kind of illustrations, some kind of colorful pictures, some kind of, something that should attract the reader. So you can see that in the methodology, you're making this kind of a picture, the different chemicals getting mixed, what kind of equipment is being used, some kind of a block diagram, right? Some kind of a flow chart, some kind of, the hardware, some kind of the pictures of the hardware and how they're getting integrated into the uh, overall landscape of your work. And the first thing, for example, the first thing that would come to your mind would be, let's make use of the AI to generate this illustration. This is an incorrect kind of methodology or the technique, right? Because the reviewers, they also know that there are AI tools, and it is very easy to give a quick one sentence to the AI tool, and it would generate some kind of figure. But the kind of a figure, it could not be accurate enough. It's your duty. This is your work. You are the master of whatever you have done. This is your methodology. This is not the methodology of the AI. So you are the master of that. You are going to explain your methodology. So you have to make use of your own tool. You can take help from the AI for sure. You can take help, but eventually you have to draw it by yourself by making some kind of a tool. And it is highly recommended that you make use of Inkscape. This is a free tool. You can just simply Google Inkscape, just download that into your system. Go to YouTube, you will find very quick tutorials for the Inkscape. Within 15 to 30 minutes, you will get to know how to make use of the Inkscape to draw different kind of figures. It's just a 30 minutes to 1 hour job that you will get a good enough know-how related to this software Inkscape, and you will be able to draw such kind of figures in your research paper. Okay. The do's and don'ts for the methodology. You have to justify your methodology selection. You have to justify that. You cannot just simply mention that this is the methodology that I've used. You have to justify that why you use this particular methodology in your methodology section. You need to describe your procedures clearly so the others can replicate them. You need to include the details on the instruments, material, analysis methods. For example, you have used some kind of a particular hardware. Just explain why you made use of this particular hardware. What are the details of that hardware, and why in particular you chose that particular hardware for this work. You can use subheadings, for example, materials, chemicals, statistical analysis in your methodology section. Do not discuss or interpret results here, because in this section, you're just describing the methodology. So the results is the next section. I mean, this is not the right time to talk about the results. Don't omit key information, for example, sample size, control variable. For example, I'm talking about myself. I'm an electrical engineer. I have done a particular experiment, for example, in the lab. So I need to explicitly specify that this is the frequency that I've used. This is the bandwidth that I've used. This is the transmit power that I've used. Things like that. All the key information, uh, all the key parameters, I should explicitly state all of those in the methodology section. Okay, let's go through an example. Methodology, for example, there could be subsections like materials, substrate preparation, synthesis, something like that, right? If it is related to material and methods, again, there would be different kind of subsections, right? Okay, let's go through this methodology. In materials, you're specifying what materials you have used, right? In the substrate preparation, you're stating figure 1 illustrate the preparation processes of the substrate where I mean, the details of whatever figure that you have mentioned. For example, in the methodology section, you made this figure, for example, in the methodology section. Now you're going to explain that there is an oscilloscope. There is in figure one, you can see that an oscilloscope is connected to this. You can see the side view of this. You can there was a resistor of 100 ohm connected to port A, port B, something like that. So you need to explain all of those things in the methodology section. So you could explicitly specify that this is the transmitter section, this is the receiver section, this is the channel that I'm talking about, things like that. So all of those things should be there in the methodology. Okay, now coming to the next section, which is the results and discussion. In the results, you need to specify what you found. So now you're done with the introduction. You are done with the methodology that you have used. So what is the outcome of that? You are stating that in the results. In the results, you are specifying the facts, the data, the evidence. All of those things are encapsulated in results. And discussion, what those findings mean, interpretation, comparison, significance. So you're not only giving the results, but also the interpretation of those results. So it's kind of a discussion that you're doing. Okay, so you're describing, explaining, and you're trying to relate that with, for example, the state of the art. You need to add the text and trace back to the data. For example, in the results, you have put some figures. So you can say that you can see from figure to that the efficiency of my work is 80% as compared to the technique that was used by, you can give some reference by some other work. So you can see that my efficiency is better by 20%. So you're not only explaining, but also you're trying to, give a complete trace back to the data. You're examining the tables, figures, and graphs. You can just also give some kind of graphs, figures, also put some kind of a tables as well. So it's good to put figures, tables, and graphs, all of these things in your research paper. Sometimes figures are not enough. It's better to put some tables as well, because in tables you can specify more information, right? Draw your own conclusions from the figures and graphs. So this is not the conclusion section at all, but you need to give some kind of a conclusion regarding a particular result. For example, in the result section, you have received, you have got some kind of information. So what is the conclusion that you're drawing from that particular figure? So this is the meaning of this conclusion. This is not the conclusion of the entire research paper, right? So this is how you're kind of discussing the result that you have achieved. Okay, so you're demonstrating that you have solved the problem and you have made significant advances, right? So in the results, you're summarizing, you have the summarized data. It should be clear and concise. You need to use figures and tables with description to illustrate your own findings, right? In the discussion, you need to interpret the results, why your research offers a new solution, and you have to acknowledge any limitations as well. For example, during the process of all this, you came across few difficulties. Just specify that, right? And if you think that your results are not good enough with regard to some particular, you can say, aspect of your work, just be honest and specify that, because usually the reviewers also, they acknowledge this thing, that this is, the true work, or something that is ethical. So you need to explain or acknowledge if you come across any kind of limitations. So you can see on your right side, there's a kind of a discussion, and the conclusion, and the results are specified over here. And the last section is like the conclusion. Okay, more on the results and discussion. Very, very important thing. On the top, you can see a figure. For example, this could be your result. For example, you have got some result, and this is the result of that. Okay, what is the first thing that is coming to your mind? It's not good on your eyes. It's a blurred picture. It's not good enough to put in the research paper. For example, this picture, this figure is giving an information that is very important, very, very important. But it's not good enough to put in the research paper because it's not attractive at all. There are no labels for x-axis. The y-axis is missing. What it is specifying? What is on the x-axis? What is on the y-axis? You can see the resolution of the figure is very low. So I'm having difficulty in order to understand, what this figure is, talking about. The legends are missing because you can see there are two plots, one in the blue line and one is like kind of dull brownish color. It means there are two different kind of information. So the legend should be there. There should be a legend which should specify that this blue line corresponds to, for example, A, this brown line corresponds to B, and in the detail you have mentioned that A means this and B means this. And the caption is also missing. The caption should specify that this results pertains to what exactly what, right? So on the bottom you can see another figure. There are labels for X and Y axis with the units as well. So I can see that on the Y axis there is a voltage, and the voltage is mentioned in units of volts. On the x-axis, there is time, and the unit of that is second. So I can clearly see that for this input blue, it means at 1.2 second, the corresponding value is around 1. So this is a multi-plot legend because there is legend. You can clearly say that blue means the input, the brown means or the orange means output. The resolution of the figure is also good. It is not blurred. It is good on the eyes. The caption is included as well because it's mentioned that differentiator circuit voltages are mentioned in this particular figure. So detailed caption of the figure and subfigures should be there. You need to use drawing tools like Origin Lab, Python, etc. So for example, I think most of you make use of MATLAB, right? So just to draw a figure on the MATLAB is not good enough. There are numerous options, even in the MATLAB, that you can just explore and try to see how I can improve the figure, how I can improve the size of the x-axis, what is the font that I'm using, what is the kind of extension of the shaped figure that I'm using. It could be different. There are different kind of extensions like .fig, .eps, .pdf, and numerous others, right? So you need to see and you need to explore because the results are not enough. I mean, you need to show, you need to tell this to the reader that these results are, good, yes, but they're also displayed or pictured in your research paper in a proper way. So make sure that the data is precise with acceptable resolution. You can see this table. The units are given in the column headings, right? So this is delta P with this unit of kilopascal, for example, voltage is V, the rotation angle in degrees, all information is there. So this is a good table. I am getting the right information from this table. Okay, the results do another present findings logically, for example, from general to specific. So you can talk about something which is already generalized, and then you're specifically specifying your findings to a particular application or what you pointed out earlier that I'm particularly targeting a particular application. And this is a methodology that I've been used. And since you have already mentioned the previous methodology, so you're moving from general to specific. So that is how you're going to explain your results. You need to use tables and figures effectively and highlight the key trends and significant outcomes. Do not interpret or explain if you're using a separate discussion section. Don't repeat all data in text and tables simultaneously. Don't overload figures with too many details. So it should be, you can just simply state that it should not be cluttered with so much of information. It should be neat and clean and very precise. Interpret your findings in light of previous research, because that is how you started in the introduction section, that you started from the basics and eventually from the background, from the eventually stated the state of the art, and then you presented your own work. So you have to give your findings in light of the previous research. Because I mean, your claim is that my work is good enough or something that is novel. So obviously the baseline of that should be the previous research. So that is how you compare your work with the baseline. You have to compare that in light of the previous research that has already been published. You need to explain what the result means and why they matter, right? So giving the result is not enough. You need to explain the results and why they are important. You need to mention the possible limitations and the future directions. For example, you have conducted an experiment, you have received something, you have received a lot of good results. Now you're publishing that, but You need to mention the possible limitation and the future direction of that. But this is not the end of the world. You have not conducted a kind of a research that is, you know, the last thing in the world. Obviously, there would be future direction of that as well. So you need to explain that as well, that this could be a future direction for this particular research. Don't just restate results. I mean, something which has already been mentioned. Don't just keep on repeating that. For example, on x is equal to 2, you got y is equal to 2. Don't state that. For x is equal to 2, we got y is equal to, not state results like that, right? Don't ignore contradictory findings. There could be contradictory findings. Again, you should be honest enough and don't ignore if you get any kind of contradictory findings. Just state them as it is. Don't make claims beyond your data, right? So you have got something and something that is beyond the scope of your research. Don't make claims about that. You can mention that as a part of your future work that you will explore that in the future, but don't make a blind claim that it is also, something that was not particularly targeting a particular application, but you're just specifying that without any, kind of data that you have for that. So here you can see the results, the examples. You can see different kind of images as a part of the results, and they are all explained over here. You can see figure 2a shows, figure 2b shows, figure 2c shows. So you can see all of those results in the form of images have been explained over here. In the middle, you can again see different kind of figures that are the part of the results. And on the right side, again, you can see different kind of figures. So they are good enough. They are attractive. They are, colored. Good enough. Okay, now coming to the last part of your research paper, which is a conclusion. Okay, so at the very beginning, I stated few things to you, that the first thing as a reader would be to just read out the title of the research paper. And then I would decide whether I want to read the research paper or not. I would read the abstract. But mostly the reader would also go through the conclusion as well. So he will read the abstract, and then he will also read your conclusion, what he concluded from a research, right? Because this is the closing section of a research paper, and it is summarizing the main findings and their significance, and it is also suggesting some future direction, which could be good for me as a researcher. So it should be short, clear, and focused. And that is why I would be inclined to read the conclusion as well before deciding whether I want to read the rest of the research paper or not. Okay, so in the conclusion, you need to explain what the research has achieved as it relates to the problem stated in the introduction. You need to revisit the key points in each section. You need to include a summary of the main findings, the important conclusions and implications for the field. And you need to provide the benefits and shortcomings. For example, the solution that you've presented, your research and the methodology, and you need to suggest any future research areas for researcher, like the solution presented and your research and methodology in the context of what could be done in the future, right? So you are concluding or you're summarizing everything that you have done, but you're also stating the future work that could be done in the future, right? Do summarize the key findings and their implications. Keep it brief and focused on your research question. Suggest practical applications or future studies, because typically a conclusion is a one paragraph. Do not introduce new data or citation, because whatever you have done, you have already stated that in your research paper. Now you're just concluding whatever that you have done in your research paper. Don't make overly strong or speculative statements, right? So don't try to brag about your research, or because it gives a very negative impression for the reviewer. Okay, now everything is done. The last thing or the last part of your research paper is references. So the references or the bibliography section is the list of all sources that you cited in your research paper. The journal article, the
Doctor,
books, the conference papers. Yes.
I couldn't hear the last sentence from conclusion. You said don't brag. What do you mean?
But by saying not bragging, it means that you should not overstate, or don't try to uh, mention that you have done something very extraordinary, right? So you need to be very, not overstate the things that my work is super uh, innovative. I mean, these kind of speculations or these kind of statements that are bragging your research, that are trying to portray your research as something that is extraordinary. Obviously, you have already mentioned that this work is very important with regards to a particular application or particular research area. Yes, but be too don't use over kind of statements or something that are too strong, or because it gives a very negative impression that the reviewer will get a kind of a feeling that he's trying to push me, that the particular research is very good, right? So obviously you have already stated, or you have already mentioned everything uh, in your research paper, but you need to be very careful in choosing the kind of statements that you mentioned. For example, this is a super research, and it would um, create a huge it's a huge innovation in, for example, I've done something in vehicular communication. So as a last statement, I would say that this will bring a kind of revolution in automotive industry. This is not a good statement, because you're bragging your work, right? Okay. With regard to the references, uh, it's a bibliography section, because you're citing because it is the list of all sources that you've already cited in your research paper, and it includes articles, books, conference papers, data sets, standards, sometimes websites as well. So why do we need to include references? To acknowledge the previous research, to support your methodologies, to validate the hypothesis your research proves or resolves. Because mostly you would see the citations in the introduction section, because in the introduction section you're explaining about the basic literature review of the research paper. So I mean, this section contains, I mean, the most references. So because you're acknowledging the previous research, the methodologies, the kind of techniques that you have used, for example, a particular equation that you may have extracted from some other research paper. So all of those things are kind of referred to, and hence it becomes a part of your bibliography. Some criteria: there is no limitation to the number of references, but use only those that directly support your work. Not blindly just include the references, because these days, for example, yesterday I saw on the LinkedIn, there was a research paper uh, that got highlighted, and there were about 30 something citations in that particular research paper, and the paper was already published in some journal. I'm not sure about the name of the journal. And later on, they found out that the references that those particular references that the authors have mentioned, they don't exist at all, because he made those references from the AI. Right? So that is how it got highlighted later on, and hence it got got a very bad repute for the authors of the research paper, for the journal itself, because they were not good enough to scrutinize the references that the authors have already mentioned. So you need to specify the references that you have used. Don't just mention references that you have not read, or that is not related to you. Ensure proper author contribution. Author names, title, publication name, publisher, year published, volume, page number. Every journal or a conference has its own kind of a template, and they ask the authors to follow that particular template of writing a reference. So you need to follow that. Follow the correct citation style. Every journal, as I said, has its own kind of a citation style. You have to use a particular template for that. Include only sources that are cited in the text. Double check accuracy. For example, author names, year, title. Do not use outdated or irrelevant sources. Don't list references you did not cite, and don't mix formatting styles. For example, there's a particular style that there are author names, title, publication, page number, but don't, for example, there's reference one that has author name at the start, then the title, then the publication name, the year published. I mean, this kind of hierarchy is followed for that. But in reference to the page number is given at the start, the year published is given in the middle or something like that. So you have to follow a particular template, right? Okay. Regarding the scientific writing, it is very important to use good grammatical style. We have AI tools these days, so they are helpful. You can take help from them, but eventually you have to write it by yourself. As a rule of thumb, remember that in the abstract, you would use a past tense to talk about the results because the results are already there. So obviously the past tense would be used for that. You would use a present tense to talk about general facts, the paper itself, or the analysis of the finding. For that, obviously, you would use the present tense. In the introduction, if you're talking about the general information, you can use the present tense and present perfect tense to talk about previous research, right? This has been conducted, following work had been conducted in a particular geometrical configuration, something like that. Methods. In the methods, you would use the past tense to talk about what you did. There's a tip that use passive voice. This is very common to use passive voice. So I think all of you will know what is the difference between active voice and a passive voice. This is a basic English literature. So it is a rule of thumb that a passive voice is very common for methodology section. Use the present tense to explain the diagrams or figures. For example, table 1 shows. You will not say that table 1 showed, table 1 had shown. You will say the table 1 shows, the figure 1 shows, right? Figure 1 illustrates, not figure 1 illustrated, right? So you need to be very careful. Use the past tense to talk about events that have been completed. We found that, for example, example 2, protocol was followed. Present perfect to talk about events that started in past but are still ongoing or recently completed. Many experiments have focused on present to talk about events that are general facts, discuss current meanings, and suggest future applications. For example, insulin and glucagon regulate blood glucose level. This is the present tense. You will not state insulin and glucagon regulated blood glucose level because you're not talking about a particular event. This is a general fact. It's a general information that exists, something that is already there and it exists in general. So you have to use the present tense. Increased hormone production indicates, right? These are all present tense. In the results, to talk about actual results, you can use the past tense. To explain diagram figures, you have to use the present tense. In the discussion, to interpret or talk about significant findings, you can mention that in the present tense. And to briefly summarize the findings at the very end, usually you can use the past tense. In the conclusion, to refer to your completed research, you will have to use the past tense, but present tense to talk about implication and suggest future. Obviously, you're talking about something that has to be done in the future. So obviously you cannot make use of the past tense. The author's last task once all sections are written, how did they all fit together? Obviously, you have moved on and you have followed a particular hierarchy, right? So you're done with everything. But now you have to see how do they fit together step by step. Does each section perform its appointed task? Is the order logical? Do the ideas flow together? Is it easy to read? Does the same material appear more than once? Can it be clearer? Are there enough details? So these are the questions. So it's kind of a last document. So you have to check everything as a reviewer. Although, for example, you are a writer, you have written everything. Now consider yourself as a reviewer. Just consider yourself as a reviewer and try to follow kind of a critical approach. Make a critical analysis of that. And then ask yourself, do they fit together? Is the order logical? Can it be clearer? I mean, all of these questions. If there's a tick to every question that is written over here, okay, now this thing is ready. But if something, if for example, can it be clear? You can say, oh, the particular paragraph, I think it is not clearer. Maybe the reader would not be able to understand that. Let's try to improve this. Okay, improve that. Are there enough details? For example, at the end, you will say that, no, I think I need to mention few more details. Maybe add another illustration, another figure, for example. Okay. So these are the last tasks that the author should do. Okay, that's it. We are done with all the sections that are related to any research paper. I just that includes a title, abstract keywords, introduction, methods, results, conclusion, and references. So thank you very much. If you have any question, please let me know. Thank you.
Good evening, Doctor.
Evening.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, thank you for your illustration. I would like to ask, since I'm having course RES 201, which is integrated research, what am I supposed to do? Because integrated research is just working on a part of a project. So am I writing my own paper, or am I like contributing a paper with the other teammates?
I think if I can ask Dr. Abdullah, because at the very start of today's talk, I think he mentioned that there would be a session, dedicated session by the Undergraduate Research Office, and they will going to answer all of your queries that are related to, the courses RES 100, RES 200, RES 201, because I think I'm not the right person to talk about the courses that the Undergraduate Research Office is offering right now.
Okay, thank you. One more question, please.
I cannot hear you.
Thank you. One more question, please.
Yes.
In slide the discussion do and don't. The first do says interpret your findings in light of previous research. What do you exactly mean here?
Okay. Let me share the slides again. Okay. Can you please specify the slide number or the
I am
topic?
not sure.
Was it related to,
the discussion do and don't.
Okay, this one?
Yeah. Yes.
This one. Interpret your findings in light of previous research. Okay. So you have done something. You have given the introduction. You have given your methodology. You have showed the results that you have achieved, right? Now you're going to discuss whether the results that you have got, right, are they good enough? Obviously, you're publishing something. It means you're pushing the body of the knowledge. You're giving some kind of new information. And it means you need to have some kind of a baseline, and that baseline is the previous research. Previous research that is already published. It means that was the state of the art. So you need to interpret your findings in the light of that particular previous research, which was the baseline of this particular topic. Right. So that is how you're going to give a comparison that I have achieved this, whereas the previous result achieved previous findings or the previous research achieved this. That is kind of a baseline, and that is how you're showing that your work or your work is novel enough or good enough.
So I need to like choose a one paper to compare with, you mean?
Not necessarily one paper. It could be more than one papers, but at least one paper you can say. Obviously, yes.
Thank you. One more question. In the titles,
Yes.
you've said that do not write abbreviations. However, when you give an example of a good title, there was an abbreviation. So I'm confused.
That's a good point. Okay, that's a very good point. Let me just go through. Was it this or?
Then you give us an example of good
Yes,
and poor title.
yes.
Here, for example, the first good.
Okay. Okay. Abbreviation, it should not be having any kind of acronym. That is a general rule of thumb. Yes, I agree. But sometimes there are few terminologies that are very common. For example, uh, in my particular field, there is, there is radar, right? So radar means radio detection and ranging. So you're not going to say radio detection and ranging. I'm making use of radar. I will mention that as it is. For example, I'm making use of modulation, right? And I'm making use of FM modulation. Everyone knows that FM means frequency modulation. So I can specify that as FM, right? So, I mean, there are exceptions with regards to acronyms. So if something is very common, you can give the acronym of that in the title. So it's a very good point that you have specified. But if something is not very common, obviously in that case, you're not going to specify the acronym in the title.
Okay. Is there a limit for referencing?
In general, there is no limit for the referencing, but there is a limitation in the number of pages with regards to each journal. For example, a journal says that you cannot go beyond 5 pages, right? So obviously you need to keep references within those 5 pages, right? So in that case, you can only specify the references that are more relevant to the work that you have mentioned in your research paper. So in that case, yes, but in general, there is no particular limit. There is a limit on the number of pages for your published article. And that is how indirectly you can say that that is how you have to keep the number of references to a certain limit.
So you mean that if there is like a maximum of 5 pages, I only reference the important referencing,
Yes.
although
In
it will,
case,
uh,
yes.
although there will be some information that I really took from the internet, but I didn't reference. Is that unethical?
No, no, that is not unethical. You are only mentioning the things that are more relevant. Obviously, you have a limit of 5 pages. If you're going to encapsulate all of the manuscript that you have written in 3 pages, good enough. 4 pages, good enough. Within 5 pages, good enough. But if it is going beyond 5 pages, it means this is not in accordance with the set pattern of the journal or the conference, right? So obviously, this is something that is mandatory. So obviously, you have to limit your research paper. And for example, with regards to your question regarding related to the references, you have to keep those references. For example, by putting 15 references, your paper is going to the sixth page. So obviously you have to limit that to 10 pages, right? Okay, now it's your decision. For example, whether you want to reduce the number of references, or do you think that I can resize some particular figure that you included in the paper? You can just shorten the length of some particular information. For example, you're given some information in 5 lines. You can reduce those to 3 lines. You have put a certain figure that is quite big. You can just reduce the size of that figure. If you think that reducing the number of references is not the right option and I have to mention all of those references, okay, you just increase the number of references and you have to compromise on the text or the other the other part of your research paper. That's your own decision.
Okay. Should I stick to like أنا like a specific kind of writing, like in Word there is many kinds of how the letters appear. So should I forget what is called the
Template.
one
You mean
minute.
the template? Yes. You mean the
Yeah,
template?
can I use like
Yes.
can I
No.
use like Calibri or something, or I
No.
should stick to one?
No. This is not your decision. There is a particular template of each journal. Each of the journals have their own template. So let me just show you. I think at the very start, I gave an example where I showed few research papers to you. Let me just show those papers again. Okay, on your screen, you can see this is a research paper, right? So it has a particular template. You can see the light blue background. The title is written as a bold. There's a particular font of this, right? There's a particular way of specifying a table, like table 1, something like that. Whereas if you see this research paper, right, it has its own template. You can see that the size of the text in the abstract, it's different. Everything is different, right? Because this is the template of this particular journal. Similarly, for this, it has its own template. So this is not my decision whether I want to go for the Calibri or Times New Roman or Arial or something like that. Each of the journal has its own template. They have already provided the template to you. So you need to follow that particular template.
This also includes the type of referencing, IEE format,
Exactly.
or
Yes,
this.
yes, yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. Any other question?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Will you provide us these slides so that we can review them later?
Yes, yes, we can provide that. Inshallah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other question?
Okay, seems like there is no more questions. Farah, you are raising your hand. You have question? Or Al-Jawhara, you have question, please?
Yes. Can you provide us with the recording of this meeting?
Yeah, we will try, inshallah, because currently I think the moderator of this meeting, I believe he will have the record. Then we try to upload to the YouTube.
Also, you can see my email on your screens. So if you have any related query, you just feel free to contact me. Any other question?
Okay, seems like there is no more questions. I'd like to thank Dr. Farhan again for his time and effort he made to explain to you how to write a research paper. I